I command you to heal yourself.
Hello, welcome back to the Mustache Room. I'm your host, David Ben. I realized that on the last episode that I posted, there was a portion that was unintelligible. Something happened with the technical components I was using. Been trying to do more video, and I've robbed the audio of quality. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix that. It should be seamless when I repost it, but I'll pull it down, post the new one. Shout out to Zeb for listening and giving me the feedback. So kudos to you, Zeb, for identifying that. I promise to fix it, and I will do better quality control moving forward. On this episode, however, less of my voice, more of some amazing people that are very important to me. First and foremost, the wifey's back. Jill, my counterpart in life. She is back to talk about nutrition, in this case, specifically organic versus non-organic, what that means, how you can navigate that space without breaking the bank. I think it's pretty interesting. So I'm not going to throw stuff at you that I feel is mundane or doesn't have any value. Hopefully you feel the same way. Plus her voice is just pleasant. We also have, excuse me, Patty Nagle. Patty is back on the podcast. However, previously she was Molly, and that's because she's in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and they were slow to get some of the legislation passed to allow psilocybin therapy to go on in their city. So now that we can disclose her real name and her identity, you'll see her if you're watching the YouTube video. She's awesome. She's done some amazing things for me. I did some MDMA therapy. She held space for me, helped me through that process, and it's been an amazing amount of sustained change, beneficial in my life. So I owe a lot to her. She has a new project called The Great Allowing, and she'll talk more about that and what that actually means. I hope you really enjoy this podcast. There are a couple things I want to mention. Sponsorship, Mustache Brands, as always, our parent company, our sponsor. Check them out. MUSTASH brands.com, social media, whatever. Also, mustacheroom.com. Here is Patty Nagel. I know that because you're based out of New Mexico, we can be a little bit more open about what you do because they've changed some of the rules regarding psychedelic assisted therapy. What have they done to kind of bring that along a little bit?
Well, from what I understand, it passed the legislature pretty significant, like with a very big majority of the vote. But I've heard, and that's for just for psilocybin treatment. And I've heard that it's going to take a couple years to get things into place. You guys know that you've been kind of following Oregon and now we're following you guys. it seems like it's unfolding very much like the cannabis industry has. But psilocybin is the only thing and that passed, but it's a really slippery slope out there. In other words, it's a lot of gray. So you can grow it, you can own it, you can use it, you can't sell it. So I am still being quite careful because it's very, not very clear. Let's just put it that way.
Sure. Well, I'm glad that they're making some headway. I mean,
Yeah.
in Denver, we're kind of the pioneers in that space.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
I'm proud to say that we've really done a good job in getting that moved along. But I love what you do. We've talked previously and how you helped me tremendously with some assisted therapy. And I have to say, Patty, to this day, the issues that I had before I came to see you, they're completely gone.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, it's like they never existed. So through setting our intention properly and through the work that you did and holding that space, I'm healed of that issue. So I'm forever indebted to you. I have my daughter now. She's almost 4. You know, a lot of things were riding on that being
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think your wife was pregnant when we worked together.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a time when I really needed to kind of sure my head up and be able to move forward as a father and a provider. And the things that were holding me back were the reasons I came to see you, and it was amazing the how the healing worked and how it's been
Great,
sustained.
great, great. And this isn't an easy world at this moment in time to be raising a child. I just have to acknowledge that. So kudos to you and your wife. And yeah, takes a village.
For
Yep.
sure. For sure. So since the last time we spoke, which has been a couple years now, I you started a website and I took a look at it. I learned a lot more about you beyond just a healing provider.
My secret life before
Yeah.
New Mexico. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I learned a lot about you, and it's really impressive what you're doing with the great allowing. But for the people that are listening that aren't familiar with the concept of allowing or what you might be trying to do through that avenue, can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it came about probably 6, 7 years ago, and I find myself assisting at a holotropic breathwork retreat, and it just came out of my mouth that I call this work, meaning expanded state of consciousness work, the great allowing. And I didn't even remember saying it until the next retreat when a woman said, "Oh yeah, Patty calls this the great allowing." And it's really a reflection of the healing process I've been in its expanded states of consciousness work, because much of my life, and if you know my story, you'd appreciate it more, was about where there's a will, there's a way. And just, controlling, goal oriented, very linear, try harder and to succeed. And in this work, I was really invited or forced to look at, oh, is that the only option? And so a lot of my process was about, no, this is actually about building the capacity to allow, to try less, trust more. And that was a very foreign concept for me, and I didn't really trust it. But over the last number of years, I've been able to build that capacity. And as I've shared it with people, people could really resonate with the concept of allowing. It wasn't comfortable for a lot of people, but
Sure.
they realized, oh, there's something in that. There was something that resonated. And so often with the clients that I work with, we'll fold that into the process. And it's been quite transformative for people. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm very familiar with the concept of holding space, and you taught
Yeah.
me a lot about that. But that's from the other side. That's not the internal, the introspective allowing that you're kind of working through here. So in the holding space model, it's allowing by proxy, allowing things to happen. But this is more of taking ownership of yourself and allowing things to kind of happen from within, right?
It's about recognizing that in most any context, there's a choice. I can either push, manage, control, do something, or I have a choice to just step back a bit and allow things to unfold. And
Gotcha.
when there's that choice, I've found that things really open up. And it's kind of liberating. It's like, oh, I don't always have to control things. I don't always have to make things happen. I don't always have to do more. And so it's about recognizing and slowing down. That's one of the requirements. We have to slow down to recognize those default mode networks, which I
Sure.
had very established default mode network to say, oh, wait a second, I have a choice here. And sometimes the better choice is to actually do something. But even in the allowing, that's action. That's taking, that's making a choice. So
Gotcha. Very
it's
intentional.
about that. Yeah. Yep.
And that reminds me a lot of my struggles with meditation. When I learned to meditate, you
Yep.
have to allow things to just
Exactly.
happen.
Yep.
Yeah, so that makes complete sense. And if people are not familiar, if they haven't been to your website, haven't seen your story, the things that I learned about you, really like high level athlete, very competitive. You got your degree in sports science. So I mean, that was all part of your makeup, right? The
Yeah.
win, get better, keep persevering. So the allowing thing must have been really difficult for you to kind of do a 180 and not being so fast paced and moving
It was
forward.
completely foreign. And I'm not, I'll never get there, but it's more about the process and becoming more whole. That's how I look at it. And the allowing piece, if you want to use Jungian terms, the masculine, the feminine, is much more of a feminine posture of openness, receiving, not knowing, where the masculine posture is about action, doing, seeing, knowing. And so I was in this process kind of becoming more whole in developing that side of myself. So,
Fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
And so on your website you highlighted a podcast, and I listened to the podcast that you had, and so you're dipping your toe more in the podcast space, which I'm glad to hear. Are you going to be a regular on what was the name of that podcast that you did?
Thinking out loud.
Thinking Out Loud. Are you going to be a regular guest on that podcast?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
This woman was introduced, we were introduced to each other by a friend. And this friend does similar work as me. And she's also one that's really embracing this concept of the great allowing. And so she said, "Oh, you need to meet Natalie." And so we did a podcast and she said, "Oh, we need to do another one." But I didn't even know that you could be a regular on podcasts.
Well,
Yeah.
it depends how interesting you are, and you're very interesting. So I would imagine people are clamoring to get you back on their podcast.
Well, yeah, I mean, this whole great allowing, there's so much that has come through for me around that concept. Um, like if you're trying, you're not allowing. What does that mean? Or one of my blogs is try less, trust more. And that's one of the gifts that has come from this posture of allowing is, oh, maybe I don't have to try so hard. And I'm enough. And if I just allow, things to open, it's about being willing to be surprised, right? As
Sure.
opposed to, oh, I'm gonna make things happen. So, yeah, no, I'm not sure I'm a regular. That's the only podcast I've ever done besides the ones with you.
Okay.
So, yeah, yeah,
Well, you're a great guest. So trust me, the requests are going to keep coming the more people hear
okay,
you. I'll be a little jealous if you become more of a regular on somebody else's than mine, but we'll work through it. You mentioned the allowing thing, and I talked about meditation, but also the psychedelic experiences. The main thing is just trust in the process, allow things to happen to you, and the more you relax, the more you settle down, the more the medicine takes hold, and the more profound the experience is. So again, that plays right into that concept of just
yeah,
allowing things to organically transpire.
yeah. Yeah, the
I love
best
that.
posture to come into the work and even through the journey is openness, receptivity, not knowing, allowing. It's about trusting that there's a deeper knowing within us that knows where we need to go in these expanded states of consciousness for our own healing. And, it is about opening up to maybe there is more out there that actually can support us, right? That framework of, oh, what if there were allies out there, figuratively and literally, that are there to support us, and we just need to open to that and allow the
Wow.
support to come in, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So,
And so, are you still primarily working with the substances that we spoke to before, like psilocybin, MDMA, or have you expanded your scope? Obviously, the breath work that you do through
yeah,
your
breath work.
training.
Yeah.
Are there any other substances or any
Now,
methods still sticking with the core substances?
yeah, those are the only two, and that's primarily because I have so much of my own experience with those two. I've experienced others, but unless I'm really comfortable with a substance, I don't feel comfortable offering it to people. And sometimes some of them are not accessible. You know, there's substances that I don't have access to. Um, and to be honest with you, I don't want to exploit the indigenous ways. So have no desire to work with ayahuasca or peyote. I feel like I have no business doing that. So, even
Respect that.
psilocybin is a little bit of I just I like to honor the fact that these medicines and substances have been around for eons and have been used in healing contexts. So this isn't anything new when it comes to the healing potential. It's just we in our Western culture are finally coming around to the fact that, oh, these can be used in a different way for
I
healing.
like that too. And I know that a lot of the Native American tribes are trying to resist the westernization of all the stuff that's happening and trying to keep it in their ceremonies and keep it as their sacred substance. I I've seen tobacco and other things that have kind of been, we talked about it on a previous episode of the podcast. Tobacco has been used in ceremonies and in sacred capacities for a long time. And then we decided that it was going to become part of cigarettes and kind of ruin the whole
Yeah,
concept of tobacco
exactly.
altogether. And so I could see why you'd be resistant to encroaching upon those sacred substances and how they're held so dear to certain indigenous cultures. So I respect that a lot.
Yeah, and I'm concerned about these substances becoming legalized because there are already companies that are exploiting them to make money. That's, there's some out companies out there that want to patent the process and tell you what color the sheets have to be, what color the wall has to be, and all the setting. And my fear is that it's going to take the soul out of it and the sacredness that actually is inherent in the work. So I have a lot of concerns about these substances becoming legal and how they're going to be used and that sort of thing. So yeah,
Yeah, I agree. We've seen a lot of companies that are trying to synthesize psilocybin, tweak it, take out the trippy parts and make it,
yeah,
more of a lovely experience. And I talked about previously, like the setting your intention, treating things with respect, treating the process with care, and being mindful that it is medicine. That should never go away, right? So if
yeah,
you had now have shroom shops on the end of every
right.
corner and people can just go recreationally take as much as they want, that's a slippery slope, and it could potentially create a black eye for the real work that's being done in a medicinal capacity. So
Right.
I 100% feel the same way.
Yep. Yep. So we'll see.
Yeah. Decriminalization, totally different, right? I mean, that allows us to use it. It's organic stuff. We can grow it, use it responsibly. But yeah, the legalization takes it to a whole new level that can become kind of scary.
Yeah, and in our culture, at least the culture I grew up in, um, and I'm generalizing, but the sacred or the ritual isn't something that's really inherent, like it is in indigenous cultures. Like they use these medicines like the sacrament at church every week, so it's incorporated into their way of life, which is very different than the way we're approaching it. And that's where I'm afraid the soul is going to kind of be taken out of it because we don't have that foundation for which to use, you know, to experience expanded states of consciousness in that capacity. You know, it's not about getting high, which is why I don't like to use the word trip. I don't ever refer to an experience as a trip. It's a journey. And so, this has been my learning edge as well. I didn't grow up, I grew up initially Catholic, so I'm recovering Catholic, and that really didn't provide me with the foundation that the indigenous cultures have. So, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Religion can kind of sway things a
Yeah.
little bit. My cat is rubbing up against my computer, which is nice. Thanks for wanting to hang out. But yeah. So yeah, I agree. Yeah. And the the thing for me too is, you look at this culture and we have all these weight loss drugs and other things that are these quick fixes, and I think that's what they're trying to do with these entheogens. And I mean, there's just so much more to it.
Yeah.
The net is important, but the journey is also very important,
Right.
and I don't want to trade one because it's all part of the necessary process.
Yeah, and the thing I get concerned about is all these certifications, quote, out there to become a psychedelic assisted psychotherapist, which are quite sort of, A lot of them don't have a lot of experiential components in it. It's all theoretical or academic, and they're short relative to the apprentice model that I think this work deserves. Like really apprenticing with someone who has been holding this work for years. And I feel like I've been fortunate enough, some of it's through the Groff breath work and that lineage, but I feel like I've been in an apprentice role versus, oh, I'm going to take 3 weekends and come out certified to do this work. And I've been hearing nightmare stories about how this work is being not held. And these are by people who are, quote, certified. So it's just, it is what it is, but it is a concern. Yeah.
Well, I mean, certifications too. It's the certifying party is always an important factor. Like when you
Yeah.
talk about all your extensive holotropic breath work and Groff training, I mean, that was quite a journey. I remember you spent
Yeah.
several years and had to
Yeah.
have several practical hours in the space. And so that 100% makes sense because you treat it with the gravity it deserves because you had
Right.
to do so much to get there. And yeah, if I can just get a piece of paper from somebody that now wants to say
Yeah,
they know
exactly.
everything about this space, that's not the same.
And some of these certifications, people don't have to have any of their own experience. And I think that's negligent. I've talked to people who have gone through certifications and they have no desire to engage with the substances. And I've had very contentious conversations about that. About I think one of the most important things is you have experience under your belt so you can sit with people. But a lot of these certifications, especially the early on ones, didn't require that. So,
Yeah, no, if you can't empathize with somebody because you've never been in their shoes, I don't understand how you can even approach that. It seems fraudulent, like you're
that's what I
inferring.
mean. It's kind of
Yeah.
dangerous. But yeah, I've
Oh,
had talked to therapists who are like, "Well, I work with people around trauma and I haven't had any traumatic experience." And I'm like, "Well, first of all, if you're human, chances are you have, but also that we're not talking about the same thing." I said, "How are you going to sit with someone who's having a transpersonal experience and you've never had one yourself? And how are you going to help a person integrate a transpersonal experience if you have no reference?" And after I said that, there was silence, but didn't matter. They went on to get their certification. And so, yeah,
well, that's unfortunate that somebody's gonna have to learn that the hard way.
yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, I don't want to be party to that either.
And it
So
brings me back to educating people
yeah.
about how do you vet someone in my role? What are some of the things you're looking for that are red flags? Like I've heard of people who are not in the room with the client. That's a big red flag, right? So there's certain things that I think there's a need for education, just the general public. What do you look for? um, people's capacity to be present and do they have experience with whatever they're offering. So there's a lot of things that in the vetting process that would help determine, okay, is this the right person? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you sent me questionnaires and it's hard to do background checks and other things when the space is not, it's kind of in limbo legal wise and things are in the process of being decriminalized. It's hard to really be able to do your due diligence as a consumer or as a
Right.
customer.
Yeah.
That information may not be available or
Right.
the healer may not be willing to divulge all that information.
Yeah. But
So
just the
I do.
contraindications that exist between medicines that people, pharmaceuticals that a person might be on and psychedelics, that's a big one. So, you want to ask. So I actually pay for access to a pharmacist whose whole business is around consulting around the interaction of pharmaceuticals with psychedelics. So I'm doing my due diligence there. But I've
The
talked to people like,
SSRIs.
yeah, yeah, SSRIs, SNRIs, some of the sleep meds, there's just, it might not kill you, but there's considerations. So,
Yeah, I love that, and I expect that from you, knowing you and being party to your services. I I know that there are a couple big things for people that are out there that are considering getting some healing, whether it be breath work or, using a substance or whatever, there are two big psychological conditions I know that are disqualifiers, schizophrenia and bipolarism. Are there any others that you look for or that are red flags that you may not even want to deal with somebody because you know that it could be a problem in conjunction with the medicine?
It might not be that they've been diagnosed with something, but I might talk to someone and be listening, and I'm hearing that their world is, for whatever reason, destabilized. It might be they're going through a huge transition. It might be, recent death of a family member, divorce, job change. And so if I hear that, I might say to the person, timing is everything here. This work can be disorienting, destabilizing, powerful, catalyzing. And this might not, if you're standing on shaky ground for whatever reason, this might not be a good time to engage with the work, right? Because you don't need, usually it's about, oh, you're feeling like you're on solid ground in order to engage with this work. Otherwise, it can be more destabilizing, more dot, 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 right?
Difficult
So,
to establish set and setting to make it to pave the way for a successful experience.
well, it's just if someone's already feeling like their world is kind of destabilized, and I don't mean that from a mental health perspective, I just mean something's up in their world that's kind of turning the world upside down. And I named a few. I don't feel as though this work is necessarily the best work to be engaging in at that point, but sometimes it is. But it's about, oh, how do you vet that, right? What kind of support do you have around you? Do you have another set of eyes? And I usually mean a therapeutic set of eyes that's kind of watching your response to what could be more destabilization, right?
Sure.
And
And
some people
I
come to work because they want things to be shaken up. But if your life is kind of already in that state, this might not be good time.
And I always
So,
recommend that a therapist that or some therapy system has bookends for your experience. Somebody that can help you set your intention, but then can also help you integrate and make
yeah.
sense of your experience. So, do you have a network of psychologists or psychiatrists that you can work with to kind of help people provide those bookends? Um, Psychedelic friendly therapists, people that can kind of work with you to kind of fill in those gaps?
I do. I do. And when I talk to someone in the initial call, I'll ask them to describe their support network. And, if they don't have to be in therapy, if they are, it's like, okay, I can sleep better at night. But if I don't feel like they have a lot of support around them, I might say, would you be open to a therapeutic referral if you needed it, right? It's not it's not a guarantee that your world's going to be turned upside down by this work, but it has the potential. So I feel like I'd be negligent if I didn't vet that. What kind of support do you have around you? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a therapist, but depending on, you know, the person's biographical history, what they're coming to the work for, I might say, this might be a time to seek out a therapist who can help you integrate long term, or be a form of support. So there's no formula in this work, which is why I love it.
Sure.
So there's no black and white, but there is a lot of discernment and in how I guide a person. I might say, let's wait 3 months and see where you're at in 3 months. So yes, the schizophrenia, the bipolar, those are deal breakers.
Sure.
Um, Unless, there's some cases where a person might not have had a bipolar diagnosis or episode for decades. And bipolar is one of those things which is often, it's a catch-all. So people who have experienced complex trauma, sometimes it can look like bipolar.
Oh,
So you kind of have to, hold that lightly. But yeah, bipolar diagnosis is a contraindication. Yeah.
Well, I really wanted to follow up and see where your breath work stands, if you have any upcoming breath work ceremonies or anything. I really so badly want to be party to that. And so selfishly, I'd like to know if you have anything coming up, but also for the listeners. I've talked about it on a few different episodes with you and another friend of mine, and I find it fascinating and I would love to experience it, but I'm just curious if that's something that's on your schedule.
Yeah, actually, I start a 5-day retreat tomorrow.
Oh,
So
wow. I'm a little
yeah,
late to the game.
we offer, so if people go to grofflegacyproject.org, we offer usually 5 retreats in a year, somewhere around the Santa Fe area. So that's an option. And let me just finish answering the question, then I'll go back to how breath work is different than psychedelic work in general. But also, the Psychedelic Science Conference is coming up in Denver, right? And the Groff Legacy Project is offering a pre-conference workshop where people can go and experience breath work. It's like a 2.5-day program. Everybody gets to breathe once, but that's coming up in June.
Okay.
So they can go to Psychedelic Science 2025, I think, or it's easy to find, but we are offering a pre-conference workshop, which we did
Great.
back in 2023 and had 240 people. So that's a wild ride.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I just want to say some people are like, well, how is breath work? And breath work is now a buzz term. So, you have to really ask when someone says, "Oh, I've done breath work," I'll say, "Well, tell me about the form." Because the Groff breath work is a whole methodology, so to speak. And for instance, each breathwork session is 2.5 to 3 hours long. So this isn't a technique that's like a half an hour. So it's usually done in a group. I think it's much more powerful when it's done in a group. So the community is really important. And many people will say that the most they got out of like this 5-day retreat is the community. So
Hmm.
that's one way that it differs than psychedelic work one-on-one. And the other is there's a very strong somatic component to it. So facilitators can help catalyze energy release work, and it's actually hands-on work, but that's another that differs from psychedelic work.
Okay.
So it can be quite dynamic. It can be really powerful. We've had psychonauts come and kind of be a little bit like, yeah, whatever. And they have been blown away as to how powerful the experience has been relative to their psychedelic experience.
Mm.
So,
And does it touch the same receptors as like psilocybin, the 5-HT2A receptors, or is it a different
they
sort of
haven't done a lot
thing?
of research on it, and it's hard to really, it's one of those things, and we'll inevitably have people who ask, well, what's the science behind it? And it's like, there isn't a lot of science. You just have to trust your experience, right? It's just
Understood.
like sometimes you can't explain things. And sometimes explaining things takes the soul out of it, right? But
No, good
it's,
point.
yeah.
Like
So,
magic, but we don't like to talk about magic. But yes, like magic,
yeah,
explaining it
exactly.
takes
It's like
takes the
the
soul out of it.
unexplainable. It's,
Yeah.
so, but a lot of people come away from that work pretty blown away around the potential to access the same territory as psychedelics. And if
I love
anybody's
it.
curious, if you Google Stanislav Grof, he's written like 86 books. He's done some amazing work around expanded states of consciousness, like the cartography of the psyche. He's actually written books about where are all the places you can go in these expanded states of consciousness. And it's quite like neonatal time in the womb and one's actual birth are places where people can go in these experiences.
Oh, wow.
So he's done some amazing work. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I will definitely check that out. I wish that I had contacted you a little bit sooner, so that I could be part of the next one, but expect to see my face in one of your upcoming retreats for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Patty, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. You look great. Thanks for taking the time to do your hair.
Yeah.
You look
Yeah.
fantastic. I'm so happy that you're finally bringing your work into the mainstream a little bit more. because, like I said, I benefited from it so significantly. I would love for others to have that benefit. So, yeah, keep doing what you're doing. And people that are listening, check out The Great Allowing. And Patty,
Yeah,
thanks for spending time with me.
thegreatallowing.com is my website. So if anybody wants to reach me, they can do it through that. And next time, David, I want to see your daughter. Where is she?
Oh,
I was
she's at
hoping.
school. She's
Okay.
at school, but I will schedule it so I can have her face on the podcast.
Oh,
She
she
is
will
my
look
pride and
so
joy.
cute. Yeah.
Thank you.
She's a special guest.
She just tells me what to do.
To me.
Hi.
And this family. And if you're watching on the video on YouTube, you will see there's also Russell, who is our younger son, who's been extremely expensive. But overall,
Problem child.
yeah, overall a value add to the family. I don't know, like if it was basketball, I'm not sure about his plus minus. Jill is here, and the reason I brought Jill back in is because she's an expert in nutrition and trying to, help listeners of the podcast and myself just kind of do better by their overall health. And so we wanted to go over some stuff that I find pretty interesting, organic versus non-organic, kind of like what that means, what the science behind it looks like. So how does this stuff work? How do these actual buzzwords attach to real science?
Yeah, I would say that organic today is traditional farming back in the day. When I say back in the day, 1950s, 60s, all the way until the 70s, when pesticides and fertilizers and all of those were first introduced. So organic farming is just pure and without any of those additives. So again, that's fertilizers, pesticides, any artificial agents. Um, they brought those in to help crops survive through insects, through disease, and while it does have, benefits to that piece of it, it's harming our health.
Sure. Robbing Peter to pay Paul, if you will.
Essentially, yeah.
And that kind of sucks. And I do remember I can't remember which documentary it was, historical documentary, but they were talking about that pesticide and how society embraced it like it was, Jesus had arrived for it was the most profound thing, and they used it everywhere without
It
really
solved the problem,
yeah,
but with no caution to what problems will it may cause, could it cause by introducing it. So pretty much, and since then, people that have paid attention to pesticides and ask questions where their food comes from, they seek out organic or just free of using those additives. So for now, food can be labeled as certified organic. So certifications have come decades after that. The Organic Food Production Act was introduced in the 1990, but it wasn't actually implemented until 2002. So it took 12 years for them to actually figure that out and roll it out with the standards that they need to actually certify food as organic. And the well, it would be great if we could all eat 100% organic of every food or morsel that goes into our mouths. If that's not the case, it's very expensive to purchase organic because of
sure,
all the extra measures that farmers have to take. So there is a way to kind of focus on still getting the benefits of eating fruits and vegetables, but then also not breaking the bank.
sure,
So they've come up with a list, the Clean 15, so kind of the 15 foods that generally test low for pesticides or additives. And those are ones that you could buy standard. So don't put a priority on buying those organically. When you're making your shopping list, when you're looking at, how to provide health foods for your family, the while also saving some money while you can. So the Clean 15, these are this list is tested every single year and published every year. So um, the USDA will go out, test all these fruits, vegetables, see which ones test the highest for pesticides and additives, and those that test the lowest. So the lowest ones that measure are going to be your Clean 15.
okay,
So these are the easiest way to remember this are the fruits and vegetables that have almost like a thicker skin or a protective layer. So we're talking avocados, carrots, kiwi, melon, watermelon, honeydew, potatoes, sweet potatoes, onions, pineapple, the ones with a thick outer surface that you don't generally eat. It's carved off, it's shaved off, and you get the benefits from the inside.
And it absorbs all of that stuff for you. Basically, you offload all that nasty stuff to the rind or the piece that you're not going to eat, and then you break that apart, and the part is maintained pristine.
Yeah, it could be looked at a few different ways. I think when you think of pesticides being sprayed on plants and sprayed on fruit, it's on the skin level.
Sure.
So if it's a porous fruit or vegetable, it's going to penetrate inward. For the Clean 15, what's most likely happening is the pesticides are sitting on the outside, but it's not penetrating into the fruit or vegetable itself.
Okay.
So when you carve off that pesticide rind, if you will, you're gonna, lose a lot of the pesticides that would have been sprayed on it.
Okay, that makes sense. So the Dirty Dozen, I remember you told
Dirty
me at one point. Okay,
Dozen.
Dirty Dozen.
Dirty Dozen is so the ones that test highest with
Okay.
pesticides. So first and foremost, you should always wash your produce. Even just a good rinse under water. Use your finger, use a cloth. There's some like scrubs out there, geared for vegetables and fruits to kind of give them a bath before you ingest them.
Okay,
So always wash them, whether or not they're organic or not.
makes sense.
But when we're talking about the Dirty Dozen, definitely always wash these. Um, Again, you don't have to have a crazy solution. Just giving them a good rinse underwater is going to rinse off some of that residue. So these are going to be ones the opposite end of the scale when you think of a thick rind. These are the ones that you eat the entire fruit.
Okay.
So the skin is thin, it's permeable. Peaches, strawberries, blueberries, cherries, any spinach, greens, collard greens, kale, all of that, the residue is going to be easily absorbed into those fruits.
Okay.
So for those, I would recommend if you have the money in your wallet, prioritize maybe buying the fruits and vegetables on the Clean 15 non-organic,
Ah,
and then don't buy or buy organically the ones on the Dirty Dozen.
That
So
makes
you
sense.
can kind of modify your shopping list to still get benefits of fruits and vegetables by also looking at this list and buying accordingly.
So I mean, when you say not break the bank, like what is the price disparity usually between
Oh,
organic and
it could
inorganic?
be significant. I mean, it could be double.
Really?
So if a pint of strawberries, $3.99, organic, $6.99, $7.99. Yeah, it's at least $1 higher per pound or per package, if not oftentimes more.
That makes sense. So if you can piecemeal it and only do the Dirty Dozen organic, then maybe, not have
Yeah.
to have a huge setback. I remember you said spinach, and I know every time there's an E. coli breakout or something, it seems like spinach is kind of at the heart of it. So that makes sense that that one would be part of the Dirty Dozen, absorbing all that outside stuff a little bit more easily.
That's one way to look at it. I think it definitely comes to greens. It's just, it provides like the perfect environment. So greens are extremely moist. So any sort of lettuce, so they're going to have a moisture content to them. And then when you get into that danger zone of the temperature, right? If you heat up spinach and it's introduced to bacteria, it's just going to blow up. So
Wait, so I don't know the temperature. What you pretended like I knew you were talking about. What do you mean?
okay, so yes, thank you for
Know your
calling me on
audience
that.
in this immediate room.
So yeah, and I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but for the gist of it, reason why you don't leave meat on the counter, right? If it gets warmer than the threshold, so there's a danger zone for temperature in cooking.
Okay.
And this can be found on the internet, so anyone can just Google like temperature danger zone when cooking. So if your chicken is not cold, and this might be 40 degrees, for instance, for example, and it sits on the counter and it reaches like 55 degrees, 60 degrees, that's when bacteria breeds.
So the threshold is like 50, 55 or
I mean, we'd have to look this up.
okay, but it's around that
But
area.
it's whatever your fridge is.
Okay.
So whatever your fridge is set at. If it's in the freezer, it's frozen, right? So you don't have to worry about that. That's sub 32. But then you're new on grilling now, so you've got a thermometer, a food thermometer.
Yeah.
So until you hit chicken at 165, bacteria can still grow. When you
Makes
hit
sense.
165, it's killed off.
Okay.
So there could be bacteria and it's just killed off at that point.
Daddy got a Blackstone, and I've
Um,
been using a meat thermometer,
He's learning.
and it's
I'll
very,
introduce temperature to you next.
yeah. And I have a vague understanding based on your instruction with the Blackstone and my use of the meat thermometer. I definitely don't want to give anybody salmonella or
No.
any sort of
There's
disease
responsibility
as a
that
result
comes
of
with
my
cooking.
cooking.
Exactly.
So grilling, yet it may be fun and you get to hang out outside and drink a beer. There's a lot of
There's some
responsibility,
pressure. Oh yeah.
a lot of
always.
health risks associated with negligence on the grill.
Yeah.
So 165 is what you said. That's as long as I make sure that the middle of the meat is above 165,
hmm
I'm not getting anybody sick by producing meat on the grill.
Okay. I'm gonna throw this out there because
Curveball.
this was the curveball.
Okay.
The utensil you use to put the chicken on the grill and flip the chicken on the grill, when you go to pick the meat off the grill, you need a different utensil because that fork or whatever tongs you used is gonna have raw meat juice on it.
Okay. So
So
definitely.
make sure you finish it with a clean utensil. And then I would say your risk is very low.
Now, let's say I only have one utensil and I have to wash that in between these
Then you
two
wash
steps.
it.
Is there anything, do I have to use lye or just like normal dish soap? I mean, is the bacteria still alive? Do I have to
Hot
heat
water and soap.
hot water and soap? Cool.
Same thing with anytime you wash dishes, wash your hands. If the water's not cold, it's not lathering, it's not getting into your pores.
All right.
So you want it to be warm.
So, fellas, when you get behind the grill, get a meat thermometer. They're cheap
Yeah.
and they're pretty resilient. I've had it like fall on the grill and all kinds of stuff go in the dishwasher. Very resilient, and it'll assure you that you are not the direct cause in someone getting
Yeah.
severely sick. Summertime is upon us.
Grill etiquette.
And I highly recommend the Blackstone. Jill had me cooking pancakes with the help of a neighbor because I don't know that she would fully trust me by myself making pancakes, but they turned out really well
Yeah.
and super easy to clean. They're not an unofficial or even an official sponsor, but all right. So thanks for educating us, Jill.
Yeah.
We'll have to have you back. And Brussels, thanks for your lethargy and not participating in the podcast. We didn't have any mook interruptions or anything. So, Bouette, I really appreciate it. And we're out.
See ya.